The Atheist Debates Patreon project presents Humanism and Murder. Who sets the policies at your job and why? I know that in the past, when I've worked for other people, somebody's out there making decisions and I frequently disagree with them. In many occasions, I would find out that a policy that I thought that was ridiculous and unfair was in fact ridiculous and unfair, and that somebody had been essentially promoted beyond their competence and making decisions that they just didn't have the qualifications to make. They didn't have the understanding of the data. How many times have you guys seen policies at your work where you're pretty sure you could do better and you don't even have all the information? And then occasionally you'll find that there's a good reason for a policy, something that you were unaware of. And yet you didn't get promoted beyond your qualifications and talents, or maybe you did, but we'll hope that you didn't. It's a common concern. And on some occasions, you find out that the policy has a good reason. And in some cases, it was just a mistake. It was just someone thinking incorrectly, making decisions with insufficient information. Recently, the police have arrested the man who allegedly murdered the CEO of United Healthcare. I say allegedly out of habit. I've read his manifesto. I personally am convinced that he absolutely killed this guy. So is pretty much everybody else in the world. And I don't even know what's going to happen with the trial and everything else. I know he's been denied bail. We live in an incredibly volatile time where people on the left are incredibly frustrated and confused and frankly, pissed off. The world seems unjust and foolish and getting worse. When they go high or when they go low, we go high has worn out its welcome. It didn't work as some people expected, and some people are frustrated and are thinking it's time to start going low. The right has managed to go low consistently. Lying, cheating, stealing, further marginalizing minorities, staging violent coups that result in the death of police officers, and instead of justice, they now control every branch of government. Instead of facing the just wrath of a government that will not be taken over, they're in charge. It feels like bizarro world, and it's an incredibly frustrating place to live. I wake up in it every day. And the frustrations that I feel include emails from people that are attacking me, attacking us, attacking the line, attacking secularists, attacking Americans. It doesn't matter. It feels really strange. And the left called out all of those things. They called out the lying, the cheating, they called out the insurrection, and it didn't matter. They laughed in our faces and mocked us and flatly announced how much more they're going to do when they take over. And yet the USA failed its ethics test. And now it seems we're going to continue to fail our ethics test. A good chunk of people on the left have been praising the murderer and painting this guy as an idealized hero. He's finally standing up for the rest of us. He's pushing back against the millionaires and the billionaires and the CEOs and the oligarchs. He's pushing back against the system in the only way that works. And don't forget, he is, as I'm told, a stone cold hottie. So justice should work a little differently for him. I understand the frustration and the reaction. And let me be clear, I don't mourn the death of that CEO. I don't know whether the world's better off with that person in it or not. I don't think that's a decision that I or any other individual should be making. But I'm not the slightest bit worried or upset that someone who made their money exploiting the suffering and death of others, even if that wasn't how they viewed it, even if that wasn't their intent, I'm not mourning that. I am, though, mourning the death of humanistic responses and the humanistic better angels of our nature that seem to be missing among so many of my friends. I haven't run around commenting. There's memes all over. There's jokes. Some of them are, yes, amusing. I have no problem at all with gallows humor. I have no problem with, it's not too soon to make a joke about it. I don't, I don't feel any sadness or loss for that individual, but I worry that we are losing the thing that tried to keep us stable. When they go low, we go high. Maybe we don't have to go high, but maybe we don't have to start sanctioning the low. The Shooter's Manifesto demonstrated that he wasn't some lefty idealist standing up for the rest of us. He was a confused, frustrated, and justifiably angry person who felt that his mother had been repeatedly screwed over and left to suffer by United Healthcare specifically. And he may be right. But there's a process to address that claim that doesn't include killing the CEO. He decided that he didn't care about the law. That's in his manifesto. He decided that he was granted sovereignty by the Second Amendment and that this justified him retaliating in whatever way he chose to. Now, the CEO almost certainly didn't know this person or their mom, probably didn't know anything about their cases, probably didn't even have any real hand in either the denial or even the policies in many cases that led to the denial. So maybe if you drop down to the person that the CEO hired, or the people who reported to the CEO who made those policies, maybe they were the ones who should have been the target of this anger. Certainly, it can't be the person who just denied the claim. That's just a worker. That's just a worker who followed the policies in order to keep their job. And it's really frustrating. Where do you put the blame? And it makes sense that he decided we have to go straight to the top. The buck stops here. This is where we have to make the change from the top down, and it won't happen any other way. The same policies that you see as problematic as your job exist in the healthcare field, and some of them have good reasons. They could be bad policies, they could be good policies. Maybe the problem is having a healthcare system where exploitation and corruption exist and need to be opposed at every level. Maybe that system is just the wrong system. If they're trying to stop doctors from exploiting insurance companies for money, then what they're really fighting about isn't healthcare. They're fighting about money. There's profit to be made in the healthcare industry, something that should end now. And as long as there's profit to be made in the healthcare industry, there's going to be a battle between the healthcare providers, the doctors, the nurses, the hospitals, and the insurance. If they're trying to stop doctors from exploiting, they might have a good reason for this policy, but they could still be wrong and this policy could still be broken, and this is somebody's mother. And it makes complete sense that someone terribly frustrated at watching their mother suffer could be tipped over the edge to taking action like this. I'm genuinely, I'm sorry for his mom and for him more than I am for the CEO. I completely get how you can go from A to B. But there's a difference between empathizing and celebrating. There's a difference between empathizing and applauding. If you're going to say that the solution to the problems in the system is to just start killing people, who do you target and why? And why do you get to decide? Vigilante justice isn't justice. We know this. There's a reason why we've outlawed it. I think that it is frequently morally virtuous to oppose unjust laws, and occasionally a moral duty to break those laws. But the law that was broken here was against murder and vigilantism. Those laws aren't unjust. They exist for good reasons. And we have to find a better way. Now, that doesn't mean laying down. It doesn't mean you just Matt just wants to let the corporations win. No. And by the way, I'm not sitting here saying, I have the solution to this. I'm in favor of socialized medicine. I'm in favor of changing the healthcare system. But we now don't have, we in the sense that the people who might ostensibly agree with me, we don't have the power to make that change. As I say this, there are people in chat saying, he literally killed a serial killer and free Luigi. This is where we've gotten, where otherwise moral people who object to January 6th and other things are celebrating a murder. And it makes sense. It makes sense that they would respond that way. We don't have to lie down and give up. But I worry that if we start saying, okay, we'll just forgive this murder and that murder, and we'll forgive the murders that we agree with. Who's we? We spent a long time building ethical systems on the backs of other ethical systems and learning from the mistakes. We learned how to have better laws and how to be better and how to make sure that a disgruntled person has some avenue for justice. And that avenue for justice seems to be gone in this system. Where is the avenue for justice for his mom? Where's the avenue for justice for all the other people who've had their claims denied, who are dying, who are suffering, while somebody else, a bean counter somewhere, treats them, a person, like a bean? And how can we make the most money off of this person? How can we make the most money off of their suffering? How can we make the most money off of their death? That's the part of the system that's broken. And it's understandable that people have died and that people will retaliate. We can say that that guy was wrong. But there are lots of otherwise reasonable people who are likely to be similarly wrong in the future if we don't actually make changes to the system. This wasn't some lone nut. This wasn't a gun problem. This was all of those things that we typically point to as, oh, here, we just need more thoughts and prayers, and we need to change our mental health procedures and all this. This was, to all the current evidence, an otherwise reasonable person, frustrated at the way his mother was treated, who decided not to use the available processes out of frustration that he didn't think they were likely to work, and went for the closest thing to the nuclear option that he had access to. We don't have to celebrate the act to mourn the problem in the system, and we don't have to celebrate any of it to try to fix it. As a humanist, I cannot sanction his actions, but I can empathize. I do not sanction his actions, and yet I still sympathize. There are people, billions of them, who are suffering. And it's really easy to say, I'll be the one to decide how to avenge those people. And you may be right. The problem is, if you're right, it should be easy to work cooperatively with others. The foundational principles of humanism that grant us sovereignty and that set us out to try to resolve our problems without appealing to gods, without appealing to religions, those principles not only grant us the sovereignty over our life, but protect us from the sovereignty of others. You get to decide how you're going to act. And this individual decided and wrote in his little manifesto that He's above the law. He's a law unto himself. And if you celebrate that, then you have to avoid being hypocritical, celebrate it for the people who committed crimes on January 6th. There's been no demonstration that anything unjust happened other than the murder, just that he was convinced that it happened, and that all of us empathize with a broken healthcare system, and the people are suffering and the frustrations of the red tape. The system has to be fixed. And so once again, I'm stuck, because I'm glad that things are changing, but I don't like the way some of them are changing. And as a humanist, I'm going to have to keep struggling with the fact that people are taking actions that I'm opposed to on behalf of policies that I'm opposed to, in the hope of making changes that I'm in favor of. And we just have to make sure that we're not celebrating the wrong things for the wrong reasons, and that we're not turning into hypocrites, and that we're not turning into the things that we hated and opposed. I'm not saying when they go low, we go high. I'm saying we should stay ethical. And when the laws are unjust, the ethical thing to do is to oppose them and violate them. But that's not what happened here. And so all of you can feel however you want to feel about it. You can think he's a hero. You can applaud him for it. You can hope that he gets away. You can have your Luigi lookalike contest. You can encourage all of those things that you think are fun in your eat the rich, screw the CEOs mentality. And I'm there with you for a good chunk of it. Just not celebrating murder. Just not sanctioning vigilante justice, because it's never justice. Thanks.